Hey, lovely to see you. Welcome to this video called The Massive Mistake You're Making Against Fish at the Poker Table. So we're going to talk about what you're doing wrong against bad players. I don't really know why they're called fish, by the way. Why are they called fish and sharks, I suppose? But some fish are absolutely badass, aren't they? That ray that killed Steve Irwin in Australia, you wouldn't call him a weak poker player to your face. And aren't sharks fish? Anyway, let's move on. By the way, if you're enjoying the channel, and how could you not with quality like that, then please do subscribe and turn on your notifications. The notifications will tell you when we've dropped a new video. And as you know, this is poker gold. And you'd want to know if someone dropped some gold outside your house, wouldn't you? So subscribe, make this relationship official, and let's grow this channel and get the word out there. Now, we're going to talk about your poker game against bad players. And there is a massive mistake I see across our students here at Transform My Poker over and over and over again. Can you relate to this phenomenon? You're playing poker, you lose a big pot, tournaments, cash, it doesn't matter what, and the player you're playing against is a bad player or weak player, and they turn over a hand they should never have played in the first place. Maybe some king 7 that hit 2 pair on the river, maybe some jack 6 offsuit that made a straight, or something gross like that. And you say, I can't believe they're playing that card. How can I play against these players? They play any 2 cards, they call and get lucky and so on. Here's the mistake I think you're making. You are not adjusting enough to your opponents. You adjust some because you can probably spot a weak player by now, but you're not adjusting enough. You see, poker is not a game where you can learn some set rules and then just repeat those rules over and over and over again and win. That is not what poker is. Poker is a game where you are trying to make the maximum amount of chips in every situation, and you do that in the most part by exploiting your opponents. Now, you might be shouting game theory at me, game theory optimal play, which is called GTO if you've never heard of it. If you are shouting that at me, I'm on your computer. It's not going to have an influence. But game theory optimal is kind of the opposite of that. That's attempting to play in the optimal way in every situation. Not the opposite, but a slightly different approach. However, for you to win at poker, I'm going to assume that you are not a pro playing high roller events. For you to win at poker and really see a big increase in your results, the simplest way to think about it is, how do I exploit this opponent to the maximum? And if somebody is making really bad decisions, so if they're playing trash hands and getting lucky, or they're calling way too much when they don't have a strong enough hand to call with, or whatever bad decisions they're making, then your job is not to get frustrated with them. Actually, the opposite. Your job is to welcome them, right? You want to play poker against people that make really bad mistakes. Trust me. It's you that's the problem if you're not winning against them. I'm sorry to be the bearer of brutal truth. Truth hurts. But it's you that's making the mistake. Because if you're not winning against these players, it just means you're not adjusting enough. So what am I banging on about? How should you be adjusting? 2 key ways. One, important-ish way, and then a second absolutely fundamental way that you're missing. So I'm going to leave the good stuff right to the end because I'm a tease. The first one is your bluffing. Your bluffing and your bluff frequency, and where you're bluffing and how you're bluffing. Everybody knows don't bluff a calling station, right? However, first of all, are you completely putting that into practice? And second of all, that's not completely correct. So it is not correct that you can never bluff someone that calls all the time. Now, if someone was to call 100% of the time on all streets, obviously never bluff them. But that poker player doesn't really exist. If someone's calling far too much, then it's clear you shouldn't be bluffing them that much. But that doesn't mean there are 0 bluffing opportunities against those players. And here's the key. The further the hand has progressed, the better your chances of your bluff being successful. The further the hand has progressed, the better your chances of being successful. So it is very hard to bluff them pre-flop, for example. Let's say it's the start of a tournament, you've both got 200 big blinds. If that player raises and you re-raise, this calling station weak fish player, right? What are the chances of them folding? Very slim, right? They want to see the flop. They want to see what's going to happen. However, if the cards have all been dealt and you're on the river and you make a bet against this calling station player, what are the chances of him calling? He will call if he's got a hand, but all of his chances of improving his hand have gone. So you have a bluffing opportunity there because he's not going to be sophisticated enough to call you down with, nothing, ace high or a super weak pair if it's a really scary board. Bad players, calling station players, still get scared by scary boards and scary action. So just make sure you're not completely shutting off your bluffs. Obviously, you're going to bluff less if they're a calling station. But I do see people make this mistake. They go completely conservative and they miss opportunities to pick up pots where the bad player is just checking, given up, oh, you've bet, whatever. So make sure you don't shut them down completely. The second thing is far more important and far more fundamental, and that is your value betting. Your value betting. The way you beat bad players who are mostly passive players and calling station players. I understand there are some bad players that are maniacs, but they are quite infrequent. So we're really talking about players that you are going to win by having the best hand against. And so if that's where our profit's going to come from, and by the way, the dirty secret pros never tell you, this is the number one source of profit at almost all levels of the game, is having a better hand than the opponent. Bluffing, semi-bluffing, very important, but value betting is really what separates your profitable days from your unprofitable days, your winning tournaments from your losing tournaments. And you're going to want to adjust in two ways against a classic calling station player. You're going to want to adjust frequency, and you're going to want to adjust sizing. And you're probably not adjusting either enough. So in terms of frequency, you cannot autopilot decisions against bad players. So let's say you've got what you would see as a marginal hand. Let's say on the river you've got second pair with top kicker, or top pair with a mediocre kicker, or something where it's a little bit scary board or something like that. And let's say your default against an average player would be to check. And let's say that's correct. Those spots against the players that are calling you down with anything, they've got any piece of the board, or they just think their hand could be a winner or whatever, you cannot ever miss those spots. You cannot ever miss those spots. This applies on the flop, this applies on the turn. You have got to push yourself to massively increasing. I'm going to assume I'm talking to, a poker player that's, competent and kind of knows what they're doing, but isn't getting amazing results. If you're not getting the amazing results you want, you have got to push yourself to value bet more often against weaker players. Probably value bet more often in generally, but certainly against weaker players. Now, this isn't something that you can learn overnight. You've got to embrace this idea and start experimenting with it and not get discouraged when they fold, or those horrible times when they call and they've backed into two pair and your value bet was a losing bet. You've got to push yourself because they are so, so valuable. Think about a poker hand. Think about how much money there is, how many chips there are on the turn and the river in an average poker hand compared to pre-flop. These bets are the bets that really pay for you as a winning poker player. And if you miss them, if you check and take the easy road out, you will never get amazing results at poker. It's just the way the game is set up. So push yourself to value bet as often as possible. If you're never value betting, if you're value betting and never seeing a better hand, right? Never really, it just means you're not value betting enough. So you've got to push yourself and perfect this skill. Sorry, I got a bit wound up there, but I just want you to get this message because it's going to make a massive difference to your poker. And then secondly, your sizing. In general, when you value bet, you want to ask yourself, what hands am I trying to get paid by here? And then pick your bet size appropriately. Right? So if you think your opponent is very weak and it's a scary board and you can only get called by a few hands, you're going to make a smaller bet. If, however, you've got the nuts and you think he can have a lot of different hands, possibly even second nuts, you want to make a bigger value bet because it's easier and more likely for him to call. That's the general idea. Now, against calling station players, there's one more thing to add. There are some circumstances where you can make ridiculous value bets. A classic circumstance is early in a poker tournament. Doesn't matter if it's online or live, when they get given lots and lots of chips, right? And there isn't that much in the middle, but they've got lots in their stack. So let's say there's, silly example, let's say there's 2,000 chips in the middle, but they've got 30,000 in their stack and you've got the nuts, right? I meant simple example, not silly example. It just often isn't this pure. But let's say you've got the nuts. A normal bet there might be 1,200 chips, right? That might be a normal bet you'd make into a 2,000 chip pot. Against a real calling station, who's shown some resistance in the hand, so you know they have something, who's got 30,000 chips in front of them, experiment with 3,000, 4,000, even 6,000 chip bets. Because oftentimes, if they've got lots of chips in front of them, they'll just decide whether to call or not, and they won't worry about the sizing. They may even talk themselves into the fact that you are being very bluffy because you're making such a big bet and you're trying to bully them. So experiment with outsized bets when you are value betting against calling stations when they have lots of chips in front of them. But in general, pay attention to your sizing. But step number one, up your frequency. Get into their head. Do not assume they are a standard poker player. Do not write them off as just bad. There are different types of bad poker players. It's your mission to understand how they see the game and then adjust accordingly. This is the number one source of profit in your poker game that you're probably not taking advantage of. I hope you've enjoyed this video and it helps you win more chips. Leave me a comment or a question. I'd love to hear from you and hear what else you would like us to make videos for you on. There'll be another video along very soon. Do smash the like button. Give this video a like if you'd enjoyed it. And like I said at the top, subscribe and hit notifications because it does help the channel and it'll help you get the next slice of poker gold from Transform My Poker. Have a great day. Talk to you soon.